Okay, so today we're diving into a pretty wild story from the book of Numbers, chapters 16 through 18,
Just for a while.
where this simmering rebellion just explodes and reshapes, well, everything for the Israelites.
Yeah, it's huge. We're talking about the very foundations of their society, how they see leadership, their relationship with God, the whole shebang.
Right. And we're going to try to unpack all of that, right? Like, what were these guys thinking? What were the consequences of challenging, those in charge? And how did this event shape how they saw leadership and religious roles?
It's all connected, and it all goes back to the setting. I mean, picture this. The Israelites, right? They've just escaped generations of slavery in Egypt.
Talk about a life-changing experience, right?
Totally. And now they're wandering the desert. But it's not just a geographical journey, right? It's way deeper than that. They're forging a new identity, a new relationship with God. They're figuring out how to be free.
Which, let's be honest, probably comes with a whole lot of, growing pains, right?
Absolutely.
They're literally building a society from scratch in the middle of nowhere. They've got these ancient laws, sure, but there's got to be a lot of guesswork going on.
Yeah.
And in the midst of all this, this uncertainty, we meet a guy, a Levite, named Korah. And Korah, he throws down a challenge that, people are still talking about it thousands of years later.
And it's not just the challenge itself, it's what he's challenging. See, the Levites, they were already set apart, designated for religious service.
They had their lane, right?
Exactly. But Korah, his problem wasn't with the Levites' role in general. It was with the power dynamics.
He's like, who put you in charge?
Exactly. He's going after Moses and Aaron, his superiors, accusing them of hoarding authority.
And he's not exactly subtle about it either, is he?
Not at all. Number 16.3, he lays it all out there, and it's powerful. For all the congregations are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?
Wow, okay. I mean, those are fighting words. Imagine the impact of that statement on people who just got emancipated, right? Like they just broke free from oppression, and now he's talking about equality, a society where leadership is earned, not inherited. It's a powerful message.
It is. Korah is tapping into this deep human desire for fairness, for a system where everyone has a voice. It's an idealistic vision, and honestly, it's one that's driven countless movements for social change throughout history.
And it makes you think, is he the bad guy here? But then again, context is everything, right? They're in the middle of the wilderness. It's not exactly a cushy life, right? Resources are scarce, tensions are high.
For sure, the stakes are incredibly high to keep everything from falling apart.
Exactly. So even if Korah means well, even if people agree with his message, this kind of challenge at this particular moment, it could backfire spectacularly.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating. Because it's not just some philosophical debate, happening in a vacuum. It's real life with real consequences.
Yeah.
And we start to see other leaders like Dathan and Abiram latching on to Korah's rebellion. But they've got their own spin on things.
Their own agendas, maybe?
Maybe, but they're definitely tapping into a different kind of frustration. Their complaints, you can find them in number 16.1 through 14. They're much more about the day-to-day hardships, They're feeling the pinch, like, hey, we're struggling out here. Are you leading us to the promised land or what?
Right. It's less about the big picture ideals and more like, my kids are hungry.
Exactly. It's the immediate reality versus the long-term vision.
So you've got this ideological clash over authority, you've got resentment, and you've got the very real daily grind of survival just fueling the fire.
It's a recipe for, not good things, that's for sure. And it reminds us that even when you have shared beliefs, a common goal, even with, God on your side, theoretically, these internal divisions, they're almost inevitable, especially when times are tough. And how those in charge, how they address these issues, it can either make or break everything.
And in this case, let's just say it's not exactly headed towards a peaceful resolution. We're talking divine earthquakes and fire from the sky.
It's not subtle.
Not at all. But before we get to the fireworks, what does this rebellion tell us about leadership? Because Moses and Aaron, they're tasked with leading this brand new nation through the wilderness. They're human, right? They make mistakes, and clearly they're not immune to being challenged, even by their own people.
Especially by their own people, and that's a lot of pressure.
Think about it. Leading a camping trip with your friends is one thing, but guiding an entire nation through the wilderness with God, literally looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, the stakes don't get much higher than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you walk that line between authority and empathy, especially when you're dealing with real grievances?
That's a question leaders have been wrestling with since the dawn of time. And it's definitely a major theme in this story. There's no easy answer, but the book of Numbers, it gives us a glimpse into how messy it can get, the potential for things to go very, very wrong when you're trying to build a society, especially when everything feels so unstable.
And speaking of unstable, well, things are about to get a whole lot shakier. We're talking a literal earthquake, folks. But how does it happen? Do Moses and Aaron try to talk Korah and his followers down? Is there a big dramatic confrontation? So no town hall meeting then, no peace talks.
No, not quite. I mean, Moses, he goes straight to the source. After hearing everything, the complaints, the defiance, he falls on his face before God. The ultimate act of surrender and seeking guidance.
Talk about going straight to the top.
Right. And when he gets up, his message to Korah and his buddies is like, all right, tomorrow, God's going to sort this whole thing out.
Okay, that's one way to handle it. Take it up with the big guy.
It's important to remember, though, what this all represents for the Israelites. Moses isn't just, their elected representative. He's their direct line to God.
He's like their spiritual ambassador or something.
Exactly. So challenging Moses is like challenging God himself.
Yeah.
Talk about high stakes, right?
Huge stakes. So what happens? Does everyone just back down?
Oh, no. The very next morning, Korah and 250 of his followers, they march right up to the tabernacle, incense burners in hand.
They're not giving up.
Not even a little. They're ready to offer their own sacrifices, essentially saying, we're doing this our way, God. Are you with us or not?
It's like they're calling for a spiritual duel.
That's a really good way to put it. And it's not just about who's in charge anymore. It's about the whole system, their entire belief system. And everyone's watching, waiting to see what happens next.
Because what happens next is, well, it's pretty epic. The earth literally splits open, right? Talk about a mic drop moment.
Right. Imagine being there, seeing that, feeling the ground shake.
Yeah.
This is raw, untamed power, a force of nature unleashed.
It's like a scene from a movie. I mean, you can't just ignore something like that. So how do people react? Are they terrified, awestruck?
Probably all of the above. But imagine the questions going through their minds. Is this God's wrath? Is this justice? What does it mean to question authority when this is what happens?
Yeah, that's a lot to process. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? The rebellion, the earthquake, case closed. But the story keeps going, doesn't it? God saying, hold on, there's more to this.
Seriously, you'd think a divine earthquake would be a pretty clear sign, right?
You'd think so.
But there's more. It's like God knew we needed an extra push. Well, it seems like some people, even after witnessing that, they're still not convinced. The next day, we hear grumbling. The Israelites, they're scared, yeah, but they're also blaming Moses and Aaron.
Oh, wow, for the deaths of the rebels. Talk about adding insult to injury.
Right. But it shows you the complexity of the situation. It's not just about who's in charge. It's about the whole idea of leadership, about responsibility. Can you question authority, even when it's, divinely appointed? Where do you draw the line?
Right. Those are big, timeless questions, not just ancient history, right? It makes you think about all the messy situations, even today, where people are trying to balance faith and leadership, right?
Absolutely. And the story doesn't shy away from that messiness. So God, to settle things once and for all, he gives Moses very specific instructions. Gather 12 staffs, one from each tribe of Israel, each one inscribed with the name of their leader.
I can almost picture it. 12 staffs just standing there in the tabernacle, everyone holding their breath, probably a little bit terrified, a little bit hopeful. But it's not just some random lottery, right?
Not at all. This is about so much more than just picking a name out of a hat. It's about reaffirming the entire foundation of their society, their relationship with God.
Because that whole rebellion thing, it wasn't just about Korah, was it? It was this massive crisis of faith.
Right. Exactly. It shook everything to its core.
Okay, so back to the staffs. What happens? I'm assuming Aaron's staff doesn't just blend in with the others.
You could say that. The next morning, Moses goes back to the tabernacle, and Aaron's staff, the one representing the tribe of Levi, it's sprouted.
No way. Sprouted, leaves, flowers, what?
Buds, blossoms, even almonds. It's this vibrant, undeniable symbol of life, especially after everything that just went down, the death, the destruction.
Okay, I'm convinced. But it's more than just a cool magic trick, right? This blossoming staff, it means something. It changes how the Israelites understand their relationship with God, right?
Right. It solidifies the Levites' role, with Aaron as the high priest, as the connection point between God and the people. They're the ones entrusted with interpreting the law, conducting rituals, keeping the whole system running.
So in a way, even though Korah and his followers are gone, it's like their rebellion kind of worked. They wanted to show that everyone was holy, that everyone had a direct line to God.
It's a strange twist, isn't it?
Total paradox. Their rebellion backfires in this way that ends up giving even more power, more authority to the priestly class.
And just to make sure there's no confusion going forward, Numbers 18 lays it all out. The Levi's responsibilities, their rights, how they're going to be financially supported. It's all there. No more ambiguity.
Talk about job security and a pretty clear sign that you don't want to mess with this system, but it makes you think, right, at what cost? Did this event, which was meant to shut down dissent, did it also silence those genuine questions, the desire for maybe a more inclusive, approach to faith?
It's a question that echoes through time, isn't it? And it's what makes this story so compelling, so relevant even today. It's not just a straightforward story about good versus evil, right?
Right. It's messy, complicated.
Exactly. Yeah. It forces us to confront these uncomfortable realities of power, of dissent, of the challenges of building a society, especially in the face of the unknown. And it reminds us that those challenges, those questions, they don't really go away, do they?
No, they don't. We're still grappling with them today, thousands of years later. How much authority should leaders have?
Right.
How do we balance the need for order with individual freedom? How do we hold those in power accountable? These are questions that, they're never going to be easy to answer, are they?
No, and this story, it doesn't give us those answers, but it does offer a powerful framework for thinking about them. It reminds us that the journey towards a just and equitable society is ongoing.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that we have to keep having.
And that's what we've tried to do today. We've explored this ancient story of rebellion, of leadership, of divine intervention, and I hope it's left you with some things to think about, maybe even some questions of your own. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.